Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane, Podcast Pete, have a special guest. She's out of town. She's from my hometown of the Richmond area, and I met her at a Rotary Club where she was the guest speaker. And so I've been after her for a while to get her on the program. So stay tuned because serving is a big part of what we do. So, Emily, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me. So my name is Emily Millhiser. I am also from the Richmond, Virginia area, and I currently work for a nonprofit called GoochlandCares. So Goochland is a rural suburb of Richmond, Virginia, and it's either the second or third fastest growing county in Virginia. Essentially, Richmond is spreading westward, and so the county directly west of Richmond is pretty full at this point. And so a lot of development is happening in Goochland County. And traditionally, Goochland's been very rural. There's been beautiful horse farms and agricultural farms and just, beautiful land. And now a lot of suburban neighborhoods are really being built in one end of the county. And there's a huge wealth disparity in Goochland. So we have a lot of folks who are retiring to Goochland, who are living in, golf communities and things like that. And then we have folks who have been there for generations who are maybe on a fixed income. Maybe they are retired and all they have is Social Security, or they're disabled, or for whatever reason, they just can't make ends meet from month to month. So GoochlandCares is there to support folks who are living under the federal poverty line. And we provide medical services and sort of social support services. So on the medical side, we have a free medical, dental, and mental health clinic. And we also provide prescriptions and lab work to our folks. So pretty comprehensive medical services for uninsured people. And then on the social services side, we have a food pantry, a clothes closet. We provide financial support if someone needs help with a utility bill or a car repair or something like that. We provide transportation to folks who don't have it. We also have a sexual and domestic violence support program for people who aren't safe in their home. We help them work through that. So we have a lot of different support services just to try to help people make it who are not able to do that with their own resources.
Yeah, there's a lot of needs out there. And I think you're right when you we have it down here in Atlanta where we have Cartersville is kind of our Goochland. And as areas grow rapidly, so do the tax base, the property values, and it does leave people behind because all of a sudden you're third, fourth generation, and before you know it, you've got these mega subdivisions and development that are around you, and it makes it challenging for people that they want to stay where they want to stay, but the cost has gone up significantly.
Right.
So how did you what was your journey like to get into this? Were you always had a heart for serving?
I have. I actually went to school to be a marriage counselor. And so I have a master's degree in marriage counseling and worked in the mental health space for about the first 10 years of my career. And one of my mentors sat me down and she said, you belong in nonprofit world. You have such a heart for it. And I had been a volunteer pretty much my entire adult life. And I ended up coming over into the nonprofit space professionally in about 2011. And I worked for higher education nonprofits for about the first 8 or 9 years. And then in 2019, I went to work for Richmond's largest homeless shelter, which also has a very large recovery program and helps people get back in the workforce and things like that. And then last year, I came over to work for GoochlandCares.
Wow. I was on a podcast and the gentleman had a pretty remarkable story about just trauma at a young age 5. He lived in concentration camps and just moved around. It was like you heard like a very dramatic story. And so he said he came up, he didn't, but there's terms out there called PTSG, which is post-traumatic stress growth. So we go through trauma, and we have an option. Do we grow out of the trauma, or does the trauma own us?
Yeah.
Do you have anything in your past that was that kind of put you through a dramatic time, or a stressful time, or a trying time that shaped what you're doing right now?
I wouldn't say it was trauma per se, but my grandparents lived in Appalachian, Kentucky, in a holler, and my grandfather was a coal miner, and they had 9 kids, and my grandma never owned a dishwasher a day in her life. They had a tiny little 3-bedroom house, and parts of it my grandfather built with his own hands, and I spent a lot of my childhood back at my grandparents' house during holidays and things like that. And every time you walked in the door, there was a pot of soup beans on the stove, and there was fresh cornbread and a cake and the strongest coffee you've ever drank. And I really was probably in my 20s before I realized that my grandparents were poor, because you never wanted for anything when you walked into their house. And I feel like that resilience is just part of my DNA. And I've been so fortunate in my own life. And I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and the first person to go to graduate school. And so much of that was through the generosity of others, through the Pell Grant program, through scholarships that people had donated to you. And so I just feel, really called to try to help folks who don't have much. I think coming from people who didn't have a lot, I have never seen that as a character flaw or anything like that. I just think, we all have different circumstances, and whatever we can do to lift other people up is what we should do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. With Goochland Cares, like, we've seen the cost of living for housing go up significantly in the
Yes.
last 5, 10 years. What is the biggest demand you have that keeps you up at night, that our viewers can maybe understand better?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right about housing costs, and particularly in this greater Richmond area, we've seen a huge jump in prices. So folks who have lived in Goochland County for generations don't have a lot of housing options if they want to move. So if you're there in the county and you don't have money to buy a more expensive house, you're kind of stuck, right? Like, there's not a lot of affordable, there's really no affordable housing in Goochland County. And so one of our programs is a critical home repair program, where folks can call us and say, I have a leak in my roof, or my hot water heater exploded and my floor isn't stable anymore. And we'll have contractors who actually go out there and restabilize their home, because keeping them in that home is sort of the best we can offer them in terms of affordable housing, to keep them in the community that they're already rooted in. We also run an emergency housing program. So we essentially are the homeless shelter for Goochland County.
Hmm.
And, that's kind of the just knowing how many people are right there on the edge any given day. Our food pantry serves more than 350 families every single week. And, God forbid something happened where they couldn't get out to us, or whatever, a lot of those people would just go without. So, in terms of things I think about when I'm not at work, it's just that knowledge that so many people out there are doing their best and still struggling a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, giving back is so important. A lot of people, our Rotary is similar to the Rotary that I met you. We have, I think, 39 projects, service projects going on, and it's always led by somebody in our club. And we've, had a servant heart for a while. And so that when people come in, they said, I joined Rotary, and then Rotary got inside of me to
Mm,
serve.
yeah.
What, with your volunteers, how, how do you get volunteers, and what's the process look like?
Yeah, it's been really cool since I've come to GoochlandCares. I've been there for about 8 months now, and having been in the nonprofit space for a long time, I sincerely think we have some of the best volunteers I've ever come across. We have more than 1,000 people who volunteer at GoochlandCares every year, and they're really baked into the fabric of every single program that we have. We have volunteers that walk through the food pantry and help you shop for your groceries. We have volunteers who sort through all the clothing and household items that are donated to the clothes closet. We have volunteers who work our registration desk and take people's financial information and, help figure out if they're even eligible for our services. So a
Mhm.
lot of those volunteers come to us through other volunteers. People talk to their neighbors or their friends or folks they go to church with and say, if you're looking for something, let me introduce you to GoochlandCares. We also have, civic groups like the Rotary that come out. We have schools that come out and do projects, and kids will go home and tell their parents about what they did that day. So we
Mhm.
get volunteers from all over the place. We're really, really fortunate that way. And it's a relatively easy process to go on our website and fill out a volunteer application that takes 5 or 10 minutes. And then we have a virtual volunteer orientation that you sign on to for like an hour and just learn all about GoochlandCares. And then you can come in and get going.
Wow, a lot of people at my age group, they're retiring. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a person in my Rotary. I think he was electrical engineer. I'm not sure the exact engineer, but he goes, I'm going to take a year to kind of find my place in serving,
Yeah.
being a servant. And he said he read this book, Repack Your Bag. And it basically, when you retire, you basically have new priorities, new purpose, new things. Because I lived in a 55 and older for almost 2 years, and the average age there was just over 80.
Oh,
And
wow.
the thing that I learned is that, if we don't stay busy, if we don't serve, if we don't have a greater purpose than just playing golf or whatever it is, our health goes down quickly. Our
Yes.
health, and I think, and I don't know if it's true, but somebody had told me on a podcast that the average age of after somebody retires, they pass 2 years after that because they lose their support group, they lose their purpose, they lose that whole network of people that were in their whatever occupation they're in. So I think it's so important to get out there and serve. What do you like? How's your leadership within Goochland Cares? Kind of tell our viewers about what's your philosophy on your leadership team, and how do they help everything with Goochland Cares?
Yeah, I think that if there's an overarching philosophy to kind of the organization in general, it's how do we serve the people who need it? We also ask ourselves, is anyone else already doing this? Right. So, for example, we used to have an English as a second language program at GoochlandCares, and now the Y or somebody else is providing that service. So we're like, let's send them over there. We don't need to duplicate efforts for things that are already happening. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just recently in Richmond, you may have heard, we lost running water throughout the Richmond region for several days.
Yep.
And parts of Goochland were affected by that and were put on a boil water advisory for a couple days. And so, we immediately went out and bought jugs of water from the store and things like that and had them available in the food pantry for folks who lived in those parts of the county that didn't necessarily have access to clean water. So I think just the driving philosophy is, what's the need? If I didn't have adequate resources, where would I need help? And are we the most appropriate people to step in and do that? Or is there somebody else who can do that better that we could partner with and not get in each other's way?
That's good. I mean, because I love when you say there's no sense duplicating services. Somebody does something really well and let the people do that. That makes sense. So how do you balance? I mean, there's a lot of needs. How do you turn off, like when you come home and you're back into your private home and you're with the family and stuff? How do you separate the two? Have you had something that's helped you that our viewers might be able to learn from?
Yeah, I think it can be overwhelming when you really start thinking about all the needs out in the world, right? And I think one thing that has helped me personally, um, in my non-work life, I've been involved with a women's giving group called Impact 100 Richmond, and it's a group of women who pull together donations into a large fund every year, and nonprofits apply to get $100,000 grant from us, and the idea is that these are nonprofits that are kind of on the verge of doing something big, but they need somebody to write them a big check and get that momentum going. And
Hmm.
having visited a lot of nonprofits, having read a lot of these applications over the years, you realize that there's so much good work happening in the nonprofit space. There's so many needs that are being met. And I think, you know, you just have to find what consistently tugs at your heart, what you're going to be passionate about, so that you can focus your energy and your time on that work and know that there are going to be other people out there who are working on the other things. And none of us can fix everything, but we can all contribute something. And I think you just have to find peace with knowing that there's always going to be more work to be done.
Hmm. That's good. So what would you say? What do you like to do just to kind of unwind? Is there activities that you've? Is it reading? Is it doing things? What have you learned to do to kind of unwind?
Yeah, I do love to read. I love to travel and just see how things are done in other parts of the world. I have a great group of friends here in Richmond, so just getting together with them and catching up and seeing how life is going. And
Mhm.
I really love the Richmond area. We have wonderful old neighborhoods here that you can explore. We have a great restaurant scene. There's a river that runs, through the middle of downtown, so there's lots of fun river activities in the summer and things like that. So um, I sleep well at night knowing that I spend my work life really trying to make life better for others. But, it's important to enjoy the time we have here ourselves as well.
Yeah, when people know that I'm from the Richmond area, they'll ask me about it. Like, what did you like about Richmond? And when you think of the beach is a couple hours away, DC's a couple hours away, the mountains are a couple hours away. There's a lot of things within a very short drive that
Yeah.
make very geographically, you know, I used to stay up on Afton Mountain when I traveled up into the in the Shenandoah Valley in there, and it's beautiful. I mean, when you
Yeah.
look at that kind of within a stone's throw, being at the beach or being at where is it? Where the Oyster Festival, Urbana,
Urbana. Yeah.
yeah, just different places that you can go to that not many towns are located within so many very different areas. So what do you like with your daily duties? Like, do you have a morning routine that you consistently do that kind of gets you ready for the day?
I don't have any deep wisdom about get up and meditate or, do a cold plunge or anything like that. For me, so I live in the city of Richmond, and
Okay.
I drive about 30 minutes each way to get out to GoochlandCares. So I get up in the morning, I feed my dogs. I have a dog that has epilepsy, so I make sure she gets her medication. Really just kind of make sure I'm ready for the day, my husband's ready for the day, the dogs are ready for the day. If we've got a contractor coming to our house or something, they can get to what they need, and just really try to just hit the ground running, be productive, be focused. And I have that drive time to kind of get my mind straight and either, listen to music or listen to a podcast or whatever it is that I need to get, my brain in the right space to get going and do some work.
Oh, that's awesome. Now you said one of your dogs has epilepsy.
Yeah.
It's so I we growing up we had a dog that had constant seizures.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just like when they have those seizures, it just breaks your heart
Yeah.
because they're so. What kind of dog do you have that has those seizures?
I have an American Eskimo dog, so basically a little white Spitz, and
Okay.
there are certain pockets of the country where there are kind of poor breeding practices with those dogs. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, our dog came from one of those pockets, and we got her from a rescue and did genetic testing on her. And she's actually about 40% inbred. So definitely came from, some sort of puppy mill type situation. And she her epilepsy is controlled with medication at this point. So she has not had a seizure in a while, which we're really thankful for, because it is just so sad to see that happen. But we're fortunate. Our vet's office is right down the street, and we have great care for her. So
Yeah, there's that is I think well, my daughter they breed um, King St. Charles, and there's such you have to follow so many guidelines
yeah,
because when you just can't be a puppy farm, well, not a
right,
puppy factory,
yeah, yeah,
because so much genetically that can be messed up. They're always testing for this and that. And just because you got to cross your T's and dot your I's on all this because of just the nature of that kind of business. I think ours was a Yorkie, and I guess it might have come out of that, but medication didn't do any good. And it was just sad. You knew it was coming. You could see them, start to early
yeah,
sign. You had to do what you can to hold them and just
yeah.
cuddle them, make them feel comfortable while they go through it. So, what do you when you comes to your now that you're setting your yearly kind of plans? What do you have coming up this year that you're excited about?
So GoochlandCares is in a period of transition right now, and it's a really exciting time for us. Our kind of founding executive director just retired at the end of 2024 after being there for 25 years. And
Wow.
she, really built the organization from the ground up. Did not think that's what her life was going to be when she started one night a week in this little free clinic, and really dedicated her life to building this organization. And so she retired end of last year. We have a new CEO that we brought in like the end of August last year, and had a long shadowing transition time between the two CEOs to make sure that was a really smooth handoff.
Hmm.
So our new CEO has come in with a lot of great ideas and great energy. We're doing a lot of kind of technical stuff behind the scenes, updating our software and our systems, so that we can just accommodate the growth of the organization as well as possible. And so all of that takes more money, right? So on the fundraising side, we have an amazing fundraiser who's been there for about 18 years, and she is also ready to retire. So that was part of why I was hired last year, to come in and grow our fundraising team and make sure that we could continue to bring those resources in to do the work. So all of that kind of transition stuff is a lot of what we have going on right now. We also have very exciting news. So we are under contract to purchase the property that is directly next door to us. And we built our current building in 2018. We brought all 12 of our programs under one roof for the first time. So we have a really cool one-stop shop model to our services. But we are already bursting at the seams in this building that's less than 10 years old, because the county is growing, the population is growing, and the need is growing. And
Hmm.
so the only direction we can possibly, there's only one way we can possibly expand. And we've had our eye on this property for years and years and years, and we finally are under contract to purchase it. And
Good.
there is an old building there that we would be knocking down at some point, because it's just not in good shape anymore. But that will give us the option to almost double our physical footprint right there in Goochland, and really be able to think strategically and creatively about, okay, what are we going to need 20 years from now, and how do we build something that we can grow into and continue to accommodate the needs and the services that we're here to provide. So that's
Well,
our big exciting thing that's coming down the
yeah.
pipe.
Yeah, it is exciting. I have a number of nonprofits have been on my show, and Glenda Hicks is a friend of mine, and she works with nonprofits. And the one thing that we've always noticed, like there are a fair amount of nonprofits out there, which is
Mm-hmm.
natural. Everybody thinks their nonprofit is the most important nonprofit. When they're raising money, it's like there are other options for people to give, and sometimes they think their need is the most important need, which it should be, but
Yeah.
reaching out to donors, they're getting lots of requests from
Yeah.
all different types. How do you kind of communicate your value, what you provide? How have you been able to kind of put Goochland Cares in such a light that people would say, "Hey, I want to support you. I want to support your organization." Do you do anything that has been successful in your journey?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things about Goochland Care specifically because we have so many programs. You might not feel really passionately about people being able to get clothing at a really affordable price, but you might feel really passionately about helping people who are suffering in a domestic violence situation, right?
Mhm.
So we have people who just kind of latch on to one piece of what we do, and
Oh,
that's really where their heart is, and
mhm.
and that's enough. That's all we need. Um, I think that Goochland is also just this really neat community. And I don't know if it's because there's that agricultural, like farming culture from back in the day, but there really is this sense of we have to take care of our own. And so it's often not a hard sell once people understand what we do and who we're serving. Um,
Mhm.
a lot of people just once they learn about us, they're like, "Of course, I want to support that." So it's a great place to work and to be a fundraiser for because of that.
Yeah, man, that's really good. I mean, that's it makes sense, and I like to always like go down the path of what a nonprofit has been um, good at communicating, because it's all communication and getting the word out and getting people to understand your mission, moving into a new building, the needs of the county growing. And I love the idea of hand up, is we are always, handouts, we have plenty of those, but a hand up is just helping people to get through certain situations. And we all have our challenges, and sometimes catches us off guard. And to have organizations like yourself that recognize that is so important. So as we wind down, like tell our viewers, like how can they get a hold of you and how can they support Goochland Cares?
Yeah, so I imagine a lot of your audience is probably not in Virginia. Financial gifts are always helpful at GoochlandCares.org. If someone is close to us, we would love to have them come in and support us as a volunteer. We have a lot of folks who do donation drives for us, whether that's financial gifts or collecting clothing, collecting food for our food pantry, collecting toiletries or like dental kits for us to give out in our dental clinic, whatever like that. So, if you have an idea, we can probably make it work and we can probably find a way to plug you in. So I would say either our website, GoochlandCares.org, or, just call us. And we are always just really happy to figure out how someone can help.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Emily, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with our viewers. Actually, we have plans to come up to Richmond, so we'll talk about that later. And I think to be able to serve, we're a big part of what we do is that serving nonprofit part of our communication link. So, what would you want our viewers to take home? What would be the one thing you would want them to take home from our time on the podcast?
I think so many folks out there are doing their best and are still struggling. Something like 40% of the people who come to our clothes closet for clothing are seniors who are on fixed incomes, and it's not as easy as saying, well, why don't you go get a job? Maybe they can't because of their age or their health or something. So I think just starting from a place of compassion always. And, who is it that really, when you hear their story, it just really tugs your heart. And if you're looking for where to give back and where to make a difference, I think that's where you find that. And that's how you get started.
Wow, that's so good. Thank you, Emily. I want to thank you for being on our show, and if anything we can do to help move forward your cause, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.